yours?
Well, I'm Samantha Strehlo. I'm the LADC licensing coordinator with BBHT, and Kari Rechtzigel's here. She's the executive director with BBHT.
Hello, everyone.
We have this slideshow presentation that I think was passed out to everybody. We really are informal in this presentation. We'll go through it, but if any questions come up, don't feel free to step up and ask your questions, or if you need more clarification on something. And then the slideshow presentation will go pretty fast, and then we just usually open it up afterwards for Q&A, any questions that you guys have. So, the first slide we have here is...
We're going to go ahead and turn on the projector here for you, and probably turn up on the lights up there.
I'm in the way.
Show the screen. All right. And you have the control, right? To
I do.
advance next slide. Let's see if I can this one. Let me hide this other piece of paper.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. So this is just a list of where you can find the LADC regulations. Almost everything is in statute, and that can be found on Chapter 148F, and we do have a few rules that can be found in Minnesota Rules Chapter 47, 47. If you ever want to look at that, the links are available right from our website. So here's a list of the licensure requirements. Most of you probably already know them since you're enrolled in school, and I'm guessing most of you are going to be looking to do the LADC licensure in the future. The first requirement is a minimum of a bachelor's degree, 18 semester credits of alcohol and drug counseling coursework, an 880-hour alcohol and drug counseling practicum or internship, and a written comprehensive exam. All these requirements must be completed through an accredited school. So this will probably look really teeny tiny on the handout you have, but it can be found on our website if you want to look at it. It's just the specific coursework requirements within those 18 semester credits. These specific areas need to be covered. You don't need to have a course in each of these areas. One course can cover multiple areas, but within that 18 semester credits, all these areas need to be covered. We do have a temporary permit. Temporary permit allows a person who's not completed the exam and only has an associate's degree to practice under supervision. I don't know if that's going to be an option for some of you in here. It does allow you to go to work if you haven't taken the exam yet or want to wait to take the exam. You could then do the temporary permit, which would allow you to practice until you're able to pass the exam and meet all the licensure requirements. The temporary permit application fee is $100. Currently, we accept 2 exams, either the IC&RC written comprehensive exam or the NADAC comprehensive exam. Doesn't matter to us which one you take. We don't recommend one over the other, but we do accept both of them. I have listed here other options, but really this does not apply to anybody anymore. We would accept an old written and oral exam or a written exam in 2,000 hours of supervised practice. In 2008, the exam format changed to a written comprehensive exam, which means they basically incorporated the oral portion of the exam into the written exam. They don't even offer an oral exam anymore, but sometimes we do have applicants who maybe took a written exam years ago. Then they can do that option of the written exam in the 2,000 hours of supervised practice. Or maybe they took both the exam years ago and are just now, for whatever reason, applying for licensure. But I don't think it'll apply to anybody in this room. You don't apply for the exam through our office. They're both national exams. They have their own process for how you apply, so you would have to contact the exam entities directly for information on how to apply for those exams. The contact information is listed here, but it is also available on our website if you need it. So after you've completed the exam, you've completed all your schooling, and you're ready to apply for the license, this is what you will need to do. The application is available on our website. We do recommend that you print it off as close to the time that you apply for licensure as possible, just because the application changes sometimes, and we do want you to fill out the most current version. There is a $324.50 application fee. We do need your official transcripts. They do need to come directly from the school. So even if you have a sealed transcript in an envelope, you can't drop it off or send it in with your application. You do need the verification to come directly from the school. And we do ask that you include a copy of your exam results with your application. If you are licensed in another profession, if you have like a social work license, we would require that you have verification of that license sent to us as well. So for the permit or for the license, we are required to complete a background check on all applicants. You are also required to answer background questions on the application. A couple points about that is we do want you to answer all questions truthfully, read the directions carefully, and provide a detailed explanation for all yes answers. Oftentimes people will answer yes to a question, but they don't provide any sort of explanation to that yes answer, and we really need a detailed explanation of why you're answering yes to that question. Also, I always say that questions aren't meant to trick anybody. I think they're pretty straightforward. So, you know, if you think you should report it or you think that you should answer yes to the question, I would advise that you probably do that. So once your license is issued, it will be good for automatically for 2 years. And then from there on, you'll be required to renew every 2 years. The current renewal fee is the same as the license application fee. It's $324.50. 40 hours of continuing education are due every time that you renew. And within those 40 hours, you will need to show that you've completed 9 hours in cultural diversity and 3 hours in ethics. And that will be the same requirement for every renewal. The rules of conduct can be found in Minnesota Statute Section 148F 120 through 148F 205. There's a lot there, so I don't really go through them on the slideshow, but we definitely recommend that you review those and are familiar with those. And once again, you can find a link to the rules right from to the conduct right from our website. So just a little bit about the Board of Behavioral Health and Therapy. As you probably know, we license both alcohol and drug counselors and licensed professional counselors and licensed professional clinical counselors. We are a 13-member board. We have 5 LADC members on that board, 5 LPC or LPCC members, and 3 public members. We do have quarterly board meetings. We usually meet in January, April, July, and October. We also have smaller committees of the board, including application and licensure, complaint resolution committee, legislative committee, and other committees as needed. Most of those meetings, the board meeting and the committee meetings, are open to the public, so anybody can attend those meetings. They're always the meeting dates are always posted on our website. The only meetings that are closed to the public are the complaint resolution committee meetings. So this is just a review of what you can find on our website. You can find license and temporary permit applications, all the statutes and rules, calendar of meetings, lists of the names of all of our board members. Information about continuing education. Once you're licensed, you can renew online. You can also change your address online. We do have license and supervisor lookup, so you can look up any licensee right from our website. Any complaint forms that are needed and all public discipline are posted on our website. And other forms and useful information are also available on our website. And the last slide is just the contact information for myself and Kari. So at this point, we just will take any questions you guys have.
Is there a difference between, okay, I'll back up. So I don't have an undergrad bachelor's in anything, so I'm going for the COD program.
Okay.
But is there a difference? I want to get the clinical, the LPCC, and just be certified in COD. Like, I don't want to work in residential. I just want to understand how it affects mental health.
Okay.
So is there a difference in the amount of hours I have to do for the certification under an LADC?
I don't know, we don't
You're just doing testing.
No, we're not doing any testing at all. I guess I don't know what certification, we don't have a certification. Are you talking about the Minnesota Certification Board?
Pardon? I'm talking about the COD certification rather than.
That's comes through school.
Oh, it's through the school.
But if you want
Okay.
an LADC license, then you have to.
Okay.
I think she's got it.
Okay.
Thank you. Can you take the test at any time, or do you have to have your coursework completed?
I think you can take it at any time. I think maybe the IC and RC exam, they want you to have at least some of your internship completed, but you don't have to have all of it completed.
And then, is there a study guide for the test anymore?
Yeah, you would have to get that through the exam entity.
If people are looking for dual licenses with the LPCC and the LADC,
Yep.
how does that affect things like continuing education?
Well, really, probably you could get continuing education for both the licenses at the same time. I'm guessing most of the issues will overlap. I mean, obviously, the alcohol and drug counselor license, it requires that the 40 hours relate to the practice of alcohol and drug counseling. But then within the scope of your LPCC license, you can probably use some of that as well.
Okay.
So I'm
So
sure
they
that a
can-
lot of it could overlap.
They can overlap, but with
Yep.
the LADC license, obviously there's, I think you said there were a certain amount of hours of it
Yep.
that's ethics, and so that can be more general ethics,
Yep, definitely.
and some of it can be a little bit more general, but.
Definitely.
Okay.
And even some of the LPCC related continuing education could relate to the practice of alcohol and drug counseling. Maybe you're not necessarily just talking about drugs and stuff, but if it's about counseling, obviously that would relate to alcohol and drug counseling as well.
So for the most part, if you're at least somewhat careful about what you do, you don't have to do twice as many.
Yes, exactly. And Kari may want to talk about this, but and maybe you know about this, the LPCC does have a unique grad credit continuing education requirement, which the LADCs do not have. So that would be sort of a different thing. But those, if you had to complete additional grad credits, you more than likely would be able to use those towards your LADC continuing education as well.
That's why I'm here right now.
Well,
Do you want me to say more about that? The
yeah.
grad credits?
Going down.
The LPC and the LPCC license requires a minimum of 48 semester credits. And so that's the baseline to obtain a license. Then in the first 4 years of licensure, every licensee has to complete 12 additional credits to get up to 60 semester credits. Now, many people, while they're in grad school, just decide to do all 60 credits right away. And nobody has to show more than 60 credits ever. So when you're planning your coursework, you want to make sure, if you're going to apply for both licenses, make sure that you've got all of the course content areas that you need for each one. And one other thing that I would mention is, while doing the practicum, the LADC license is 880 hours. The field experience for the other license, the professional counseling licenses, is 700 hours. So some people like to try, if they can, to use the same practicum experience to meet both requirements. And so
And that works out.
it really depends on what the practicum site is and if your school is going to sign off that you did it.
And that it covered both the LPC
Yeah.
and the LADC. And with the grad credits too, so like if you applied for the LPC or LPCC and you had 50 grad credits, then you'd only have to show 10
Right.
within your first 4 years. It's a really confusing thing. So
It really is. That's the legislative process at work.
How do you determine that? I mean, let's say if I have
a practicum experience that was both for mental health because of the LPCC and also an LADC, and it was used for both, what would be looked at?
Really, it's up to the school. We would look for
Okay.
verification from the school.
Verification from the school.
Yep.
Thank you.
So did you say we need a total of 60 credits for
Yeah.
LPCC?
Not to get licensed. The baseline to get the license is 48 semester credits in the grad program.
Okay.
But then the additional 12 is a continuing ed requirement.
Okay.
And that's just for the LPCC.
LPC and LPCC.
So you can get, if you have 48 baseline, you can take the test for the license, or how does that work?
Well, the LPC and LPCC licenses have their own exam requirement. I recommend that if your ultimate goal is LPCC licensure, then take the National Clinical Mental Health Counseling exam. That's the NCMHCE.
NCMH.
I'll say it again. National Clinical, no, I'm getting mixed up.
I
National
always get it
Clinical
wrong.
Mental Health Counseling Exam, NCMHCE. And the entity that handles that exam is the National Board for Certified Counselors, and there's a link to the NBCC from our website. And there I believe there's a study guide that you can get through the NBCC. And has anyone
I've seen
taken the exam or looked into
I haven't
it?
taken it, I've looked into the study guides, they also have online, like, practice tests you can
Okay.
sign up for,
Yeah.
and go take those tests.
Okay.
So I have a question on that, because I did my degree in marriage and family therapy, so I have more than 48 credits done. And I'm getting the seal, whatever, but I've been thinking I'd rather be LPCC.
Okay.
Can I take that test, or do I have to have like specific coursework from the school before I can take that test?
I don't know what the NBCC requires. I'm guessing
I mean, I would
it's,
still take the courses anyway, but if I could apply for it sooner, I would.
I'm guessing that you have to have a degree in counseling or a related field. I don't know, but that would be a question for the NBCC.
Okay,
Like, will you allow me to sit for the exam?
okay.
Okay, I hate to belabor this, but all the letters that we talked about, national board exam,
Mhm.
at what point do you have to be in order to take the test?
That would be up to the NBCC, kind of the same as the IC and RC. I think, I'm not sure if you have to have your degree completed
Okay.
or not.
Thank you.
So at what point in your graduate studies are all of you, or are you at varying stages? Okay.
Who's gonna be finishing up in the next 4 months? What?
Which part?
Right. LADC, for LADC.
Oh,
Who's gonna be applying for LADC licensure next 4 months? Yeah, there's easy registration.
Has anybody taken the any of the EDC exams yet?
I will at the end of the month.
You did?
I will.
You're
You
registered?
will, okay, okay.
What does it take to do an ADC exam? What is that?
You'd have to contact one of the exam entities to determine that.
Is that something you wanna do before you take the LADC?
Those are the
That
other
is-
ADC. I
those
guess
are
when
the
I said
LADC.
EDC, I mean licensed alcohol, I mean
Oh, I thought that was like
LADC.
another exam.
No, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to confuse everybody.
We're just so used to how we speak around the school
Sure.
that our
When I said
semantics
ADC,
won't
I meant
match.
LADC. I apologize.
What are the perimeters for the temporaries?
As far as what you can do under a temporary permit, there is no restriction. You can do any of the functions of an alcohol and drug counselor, you just need to be supervised.
And does that go through billing too?
I have no idea about billing. I'm assuming you would bill through your supervisor though.
Yeah. And does your supervisor have to be an LADC to sign off on that?
Not necessarily, they can be licensed in another profession.
But most of the permit supervisors are LADCs.
Mhm.
How long
Yeah.
is the temporary permit good for?
You can, it's good for a year, but you can renew it up to 5 times.
And the purpose of that would be that you could be an employee doing that work, but it's just a temporary permit.
Yep, and so, you know, really the temporary permit is sort of changed in its purpose through the years. Really when it was developed about 10 years ago, they were still doing a written and an oral exam, and the exams were only offered 4 times a year. So what was happening is people were graduating, but they weren't able to start working until they completed the exams. And for some people, it was taking them a year or two to take their written exam and pass that, and take their oral exam and pass that. So it was a way to get people working while they were waiting to complete their exams. The exam process is much different now. The exams are offered on an ongoing basis, and people are able to get in there and take the faster. We're able to get results a lot faster because everything's computer based now. So people do still do the permit, but I don't think it's as popular as it used to be just because of how the exam works now. For most people, they can take the exam before they graduate. Their exam's passed. As soon as they graduate, they can just apply for the license.
And there are some people who are completing their bachelor's degree, and so they'll reach that associate's level. And so sometimes they will apply for the permit while they're finishing their
Yep, they'll
degree.
complete their ADC or coursework through a 2-year program. They don't have their bachelor's degree yet, so that allows them to start working until they're able to complete their bachelor's degree.
You said you can be supervised through someone that doesn't have a LADC, so my supervisor has a LIGSW. He can supervise the chemical counseling?
Possibly. I mean, is he work with CD clients at all?
Yes.
Then yeah.
Okay.
And it really is up to the facility you're working at too. Sometimes they think they want you to have an LADC supervisor.
I don't think the facility has any LADC supervisors. They didn't know it's Greater Minnesota.
Okay.
Okay.
When we were looking to see where like a study exam and that kind of thing, you kept saying you'd have to go through the what?
The exam entities, they're listed
Exam-
right in this PowerPoint, so it would
Okay.
be either ICNRC or NADAC. And I don't know, do you guys recommend a particular exam or just leave it up to the?
Do you have any information about what's different about them, or if anything?
You know, I know that the NADAC, they're both multiple choice tests. I know the NADAC has more questions. I think it's like 250 and the ICNRC is 150. The NADAC exam is a little bit cheaper. I think it's $160. I believe that the ICNRC is just a little over $200. As far as content, I really don't know what the difference is. I do know this: if anybody's ever looked at it, in the United States, the licensing requirements for LADCs are sort of all over the place when you go from state to state. Some states still just require certification with a high school degree. Some states require licensure and a master's degree. And each state decides which exam they're going to accept. So some states just accept the ICNRC exam, some states just accept the NADAC exam, and some are like us and accept either or. So what you might want to do is, if you think at any time that you might be going to another state, you might want to look at that state to see which exam they accept. And really, I think more states accept the ICNRC exam. I think much fewer states accept the NADAC exam, but it just depends.
So I'm taking my exam at the end of the month, and my bachelor's degree has nothing to do with chemical dependency. I've taken all the courses through here,
Sure.
but I won't graduate with my master's until about next year. Can I still get my license?
Yep.
Okay.
When you apply, you'll just have to make sure that you have your transcripts from your bachelor's degree sent to us,
Okay.
so we can verify that minimum degree.
Okay.
So even though we don't complete our program and it wasn't related to any kind of alcohol or drug education, you have a bachelor's degree that fulfills the minimal requirement?
It fills the degree requirement. You'd still need to show that you have the alcohol and drug counseling coursework and the 880-hour internship.
Okay, but you could test and take your license and have the license and still be in the process of getting that other portion.
No.
Okay.
No. So you'd have to have, so like if you were in your master's program, but you completed all of the specific coursework requirements, you maybe just hadn't graduated yet, but you did have a bachelor's degree, you could
I see.
apply. But no, if you hadn't completed your internship or the specific coursework, you could not apply yet. We just wouldn't need to see a transcript with that master's degree on it,
Got it.
as long as you have a bachelor's degree.
For the coursework, is it helpful to, I see it says you can add multiple courses. I feel like some of them, like the general area 5 co-occurring disorders, like I could list almost every course I've had.
Probably, yeah, yeah.
Here,
Yep.
now is it helpful to list multiple or?
Not necessarily. I mean, we have a grid that has been submitted to us showing us which courses you guys take meet our coursework areas.
Okay.
So you don't necessarily, if you took 5 courses and co-occurring was covered in all 5, you don't necessarily need to list all 5. You could list one of them where it was covered.
Is there any way we know what that grid looks like, or is that just internal?
You'd have to talk to
Okay.
your school.
I would probably ask you for a copy of it. You could have it prior to me starting.
You know, I can
Um,
email you a
yeah.
copy if you want.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I think Jonathan
Jonathan did it.
submitted it.
Yeah.
And then as soon as you guys receive something from us, is a file just opened? Like thinking if I was working on getting my transcript in, but my application wasn't in yet?
Yep, we have a pending file where we put all the transcripts that don't have an application to match up to.
Okay.
So then as soon as we received your application, we would look in that pending file for anything that you've submitted.
Okay.
So yeah, if you had transcripts that you wanted to submit now, you could go ahead and do that. We would keep them on file.
Okay.
Verification of internship, does that come through the school or through the site?
School.
And that would be what, transcript?
I'm trying to think. I think for you guys now,
Filling out that form.
you're filling out that form. If the school was able to give us information saying as long as the person had this internship course listed and this many credits there, it means they did 880, that would be acceptable. So it starts basically with the transcript. Then after reviewing the transcript, if it's not clear how many hours were completed or the content of the internship, then we usually contact you and there's a specific form, and then you would give that to Kristen to fill out.
And it's slightly different for the LPC and
It is.
LPCC licenses. Most schools do not have, the 700 hours right on the transcript. So in that event, then the school prepares a letter and submits it directly to us.
And
Referencing-
Adler's very aware of that process because
Yeah.
they do it all the time.
The letter, we can use that. Can you say more about that again?
It'll just be a letter on Adler letterhead, addressed to the board, referencing whatever student's name, saying this is to verify that so-and-so completed, at least 700 hours, or sometimes they list the exact ones, in their graduate studies.
Okay,
Yes,
so it's a
and then
letter to
it's-
verify the clinical hours for the board?
The field experience is how it's referred to, I think, in the statute.
Okay.
What's kind of the majority of the questions that you guys get when it comes to licensure application?
We get a lot. Once a person submitted an application, you cashed my check, where's my
Where's
license?
my license?
So just to let everybody know, when you submit an application and pay the fee, we are required by law to deposit it as soon as we receive it. It's not an indication that the license has been issued. It is an indication that we've received your application, but the depositing of the check does not correlate with the issuing of a license.
Sometimes people think they're licensed or they can practice if they've passed their exam.
Yes.
That's a no.
Yep, it's a little bit confusing because with the IC and RC, they do offer a voluntary certification. You can do that certification if you want to. But getting that certification doesn't allow you to practice in Minnesota. You have to get licensed through our office in order to practice. So oftentimes people will do that certification through IC and RC, and they get the letter that says, congratulations, you're certified, and they think, I'm licensed now. But there is that additional step of applying for your license through our office.
I have a question. When you say the LPCC and the LADC hours overlap, so are you saying the 700 for just the LPCC will also work for part of the 880 of the LADC?
It could.
So explain that.
Well, I'll take a crack at it,
Yeah,
and
go
then
ahead.
you can
Yep.
can fill in. Really, the only way it can work is for a placement where it's a facility that does co-occurring disorders, because the scope of practice for alcohol and drug counselors stops when it gets to the mental health issues, and so, you know, someone else has to provide that service. So with a mental health license, the person can do both. And that's why it works. That's the only way it can work. A mental health practicum will not work for the 880 because it has to be an alcohol and drug counseling. But an 880 could work for the 700.
I can give an example.
Let's go.
Yeah.
It's a little tricky.
Katie
you know.
and I are interning at Park Avenue. So part of our internship, we're shadowing a CD counselor and being part of that process, doing paperwork, doing group work, etc. And now we've added the mental health piece where we're taking on mental health clients because it is a co-occurring place. So we're being supervised by doctorate level or whoever supervisor for the mental health, but we're also being supervised by an LADC because we're also doing LADC stuff, CD stuff.
That's how it seems to work with most
Yeah.
people that try to do the sort of dual hours, is they have a supervisor for the mental health piece and they have a supervisor
Right.
for the chemical dependency piece. And it's also working with your school to make sure that they are okay with what you're doing as well, as far as meeting both.
So if you work in a place where there is a licensed LADC person, and you're working with mental health clients, and you're also utilizing IMR's relapse prevention, will that work?
So you're doing both the chemical dependency and the mental health.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Sounds like.
But once again, it's up to your school to verify that you did 700 hours for the professional counselor and that you did 880 for the alcohol and drug counselor.
Yeah, you just keep separating, so that's why I'm just asking.
Sure.
Because how you keep separating, you said they can overlap, and then now you're saying it separately, so that's what's confusing.
I don't think that's what I'm trying to say. And I'm sorry if I'm confusing you. They can overlap. So what Kari, I think, was trying to say is it's a little bit different for the alcohol and drug counselors because it's so specific, where professional counseling kind of covers all kinds of different counseling. It's a more general license. So if you went and did 880 hours and were just working with chemical dependency clients, you could probably use that for your LPC license as well. But you can't really do the opposite with the LADC because it's so specific. So does that make sense now?
Yep, now I get it.
Okay.
That's a good way to put it.
I'm currently have been licensed in a while with the first the LPC and now I converted 4 years ago to the LPCC.
Okay,
Now I'm doing this for my additional coursework,
sure.
hoping to do the LADC license as well with this. But my previous practicum experience from years ago isn't necessarily useful, is that?
Well, it depends on what you were doing and what your school will be willing to verify that you were doing.
But if it was mental health counseling, it shouldn't count because that's not in the scope of practice of an LADC. I mean, it becomes, those issues are recognized in the assessment process, but the mental health
Well, and I'm assuming that
You
if
know.
you weren't doing any chemical dependency or weren't working with any chemical, that your school wouldn't verify that you
But
were
that was-
anyways.
Right.
In the pre,
So you say you can do minimum of 48 credit hours and take the test and be licensed, so would that be licensed LPC?
Both the LPC and LPCC licenses, the baseline number of credits
Okay,
in a graduate program is 48.
okay.
It seems like students, there's more of a tendency for people to complete more than 48 credits.
Yeah, I always
you know,
say if
I've
it was
seen-
me, I would just do the 60 semester
Yeah.
credits as part of my degree program because it seems to be so much easier for people if they just get it out of the way. So if you apply with 60 credits, you're not gonna have to show any more grad credits.
Unless for some reason you were not able to show course content in a certain area. But
I mean,
That's
I'm going to
extremely-
finish, I have more than 48,
Okay.
probably more than 50, but I'm just asking.
Sure.
Since it was mentioned.
Right.
But I think it kind of depends on which courses you took, because it has to cover specific areas. And that's exactly why you guys all want to keep your syllabus for every class that you take, so that you can demonstrate that it meets different content areas. Because you'll have to fill, in that application form, it's gonna ask you, kind of, same one for the LADC and same for the LPCC, which areas that does it meet?
And I think it's also our recommendation that not only for the licensure process in Minnesota, but who knows where you'll all end up across the country. And so I would say keep your course syllabi forever. Just put them in a safe place and keep them.
And your internship hours, because some states require more, so
Yeah.
if you're doing more,
So
keep
what if
that.
I
That's
don't
right.
have them all? Is it still possible to get them? Because I didn't learn that when I first started, and so I didn't
That's
keep
messed
some of
up.
them, or are they the same?
For this school, we should have them for this school, if you turn them in, should
No,
be.
not the hours,
No,
the
the
syllabuses.
Oh, the syllabus, oh, yeah, yeah, I think we have them.
They're online,
I mean, but are they the
Sometimes they
current
remove
ones,
them.
or?
they,
Are they
they
dated?
keep them, on there, like I pulled off ones for my very first semester here, which is 12-13. You know, and else, but you have to grab the right one, like if it's fall 1 or fall 2 or winter 1 or.
Yeah, it's a good recommendation because that happens. Sometimes people will have attended school maybe 20 years ago and then they just go print the current syllabi off the website and it's like, no, we really need the copy from when you took the course because content changes.
And I've saved all PDFs, so if you need a specific one, let me know and I can send it to you. I've been saving them for 2.5 years.
That's about what I did here.
Yeah. Yeah, and I started the other.
Yeah, I'll go see what I've got, let you know in a week.
Are there any other like typical questions that you get a lot?
I'm trying to think. A lot of people ask how long it takes to process a license application. For the LADC specifically, I always say the average processing time is about 3 to 4 weeks. In reality, coming from Adler, a school that we're familiar with, the processing time could be much less than that. Sometimes if you don't completely fill out the application or we don't get your transcripts right away, it could take longer than that. I mean, really, most of the review that we do is based on those transcripts. So even if you apply but we don't get the transcripts a month later, there's not really much we can do. The other thing relates back to the background check. If something may come up on your background, that can sometimes delay the process a little bit.
And I would say for the LPC and LPCC licenses, we'd like to keep it at 4 weeks, but the biggest problem we have with those licenses are the supervision forms. And we try to rewrite them and make them more clear, but lots and lots of errors on the supervision documentation forms. Sometimes people will start completing postmaster's practice hours and their supervisor has not been approved. So don't do that. Because
Yeah, for your LPC,
Yeah.
LPCC post-degree hours, they do need to be completed with an approved supervisor. So before you start any supervision, make sure your supervisor is approved. If they're not already approved by our board, make sure that they contact us to verify that.
They have to submit the supervisor application, and we have to, document various things in the approval process for them.
I missed that. What are we talking about?
We're talking about, not the LADC license, but that it was just an offshoot of how long does it take to process an application. And the LADC process, I think, is a lot more streamlined. The LPC, LPCC licensure process, there are different requirements, different steps. And the supervision piece seems to be what delays that license.
Are you referring to after you finish schooling or while you're interning? After. You
After.
finish
So the
schooling.
LPC requires 2,000 hours of post-degree supervision, and the LPCC requires 4,000 hours of post-degree supervision.
Right.
So that's what Kari's referencing.
Post-degree 4,000 is what
The
usually hangs
LPCC.
up the LPCC?
It's how the documentation of those 4,000 hours comes in. Because the approved supervisor has to mail the form to us. Much like a school would mail an official transcript, that supervisor, it's an independent mailing.
How do we find out if our supervisor is approved? Is there a way to look that
There's a
up?
supervisor lookup online.
Okay.
And
Right on
you
our
can,
website, yeah.
um,
Okay.
And you can search for the last name, you can send us an email.
Okay.
And it could be that they're not currently approved with us, but they might meet the approved supervisor requirements. You just want to work with our board before you would assume that your supervisor is going to be approved.
Do you have a special form for LPC and LPCC that your tracked hours has to be turned in on? Or is it just like everybody makes up their own form?
As far as keeping track of your postmaster's supervised practice hours and how many direct client contact hours you have, we don't have a form for that. So that's between the supervisor and the supervisee, how you keep track of that. Because what comes into our office is, it's a section of the application itself, and it'll say verification of supervised practice.
So what you get is a
supervised-
verification.
Right, and there are, there's certain information that the dates supervision began and ended, how many work hours, and it has to be at least 4,000. And some people have 3 supervisors, and so it's 3 different forms, and counting up the hours from different ones. And,
Or they work part-time or less than part-time. That's
so
when
the
it starts getting
ratios of
confusing.
supervision hours to practice hours get messed up, and so that's the very complicated part of that license.
Once the supervisor is approved, is there a way that they can lose their approval?
Not really, I mean, unless
Maybe through the disciplinary
Yeah.
process.
Okay,
And-
so most likely if they've been approved. Okay.
Right, sometimes they wanna be, if they're retiring or something, they wanna be taken off the list, but there's no, and we can't really regulate supervisors who have other licenses, okay? LICSW, LMFT, LP, they all have their own licensing boards. But because professional counselors, there were no professional counselors, and so supervisors had to come from those other mental health professionals. I could see sometime in the future, that the goal for the profession would be to have professional counselors supervising their own, but we're not there yet.
So all the components that you need in order to complete it, is there like a checklist on that?
As far as the LADC,
Both, but LADC is what you're here for right now.
yep. There's not really a checklist, really, you could look over the application that's on our website,
Okay.
and that would probably be helpful.
It has everything in
Yep.
there that you need?
Yep.
I haven't looked at the application for a little while, but it still have the different methods on top.
Yep.
It does.
So that's something just to be aware of. If most of the time you're gonna do method D,
Mm-hmm.
and so there's gonna be sheets of paper on the application that don't apply to
Yep.
you. that you don't have to fill out.
Specifically, yeah, oh, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt
No,
you.
go for it.
It's like pages 9 through 11, people constantly think they have to fill them out, but it's really for a different method. So really pay attention to those, that checkbox at the top, because if there's a check next to method D, you have to complete the page. If there's not, then you don't have to do it.
How many methods are there?
Right now, there's only 3.
So if there's a D, then it doesn't go A, B, C, D.
That's because old methods have expired and are no longer available.
What are the methods then? What letters?
There's method D,
Mm-hmm.
method I, and method A. Or
A?
F, method F, thank you.
Okay.
Yes. So basically the 3 methods are the standard method, which is method D. That's just the education and the exam. Method I is sort of that weird supervised practice method that won't probably apply to anybody in here. And then method F is reciprocity, which also probably won't apply to anybody in here. So, I mean, 95% of the people that come in apply under method D. We do get some reciprocity people. I don't think I've had anybody apply under method I in years.
So then that would list all methods, so it's a good job, Kristen, pointing that out, so we don't do extra pages.
Well, I feel bad, there's the supervised practice section of the application, and that's only for method I, but then method D, people often think it's for verifying their internship hours, and it's really not, and then they go through all this work filling it out and getting their supervisor to sign off, and they don't need to do that, so.
So is there somebody who, let's say we contacted you or we contacted Kristen, just depending on who's available, and maybe we're trying to get this all put together and such. Is there a human being we can talk to?
Yes.
To kind of cover that?
Yes.
Would that be one of you two?
That would be me.
Okay. I prefer human beings.
That's fine, I can appreciate that. So email is the best way to get a hold of me, but if you did want to have a phone conversation, I'm not always good about answering my phone every time it rings, or else that's what I'd be doing all day.
Right.
But if you do want to talk, just shoot me an email and say, can we set up a time to talk on the phone, and that's fine.
Thank you.
Other burning questions? We'll have more coming in 4 months, right, when everything's applying?
Yeah. Well, that's fine. I mean, we would rather, if you have a question about something and you're not sure about it, we'd rather have people contact us than just kind of assume
Yes,
or.
or get information from someone else, not directly at the board.
I'm
Is this
sorry,
PowerPoint available if we ask you to email it, or?
I can email it to you.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
I thought you said go ahead.
I'm sorry.
I'm still a little confused on one thing.
Okay.
Okay, we've got the 12 core function sheets, right? And we need to have training in each of the core functions. But those sheets don't go to you. What goes to you then, the school verifies that we've had the 12 core functions, and then that's what goes on the application. So those sheets aren't for the board, they're for the Adler.
So you're talking about your internship?
Yeah, now,
Okay, yeah, that's a school.
not licensure, but before, well, I know we need that for the
And they're for you too,
Okay.
because you want to keep that, because at some point in time, somebody might say, what, if you were trying to get hours for, I know you already had marriage and family, but that, you might need to say, hey, I worked in this area and I've done hours in that before. So
Okay.
you want to keep that for yourself as well.
Okay.
Yeah. The other thing, just to really emphasize in here, this rules of conduct, when you guys get licensed, you're responsible for following those. It's your responsibility to know those, so it's sometimes I think people get licensed and then they just do what somebody else is doing someplace.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're licensed, you're responsible for your own license, so it's really important for you to know the rules of conduct and abide by them for your license.
Yeah, I think that is a wonderful point.
Yes, it is.
And one thing too is that they change.
Yeah.
So, one of our board members who's also on the complaint resolution committee always recommends to people, once a year, just go check them, print them, make sure everything's the same, make sure that you're just reviewing them and knowing what you need to do in certain situations. Such an important thing. Unfortunately, if you do something wrong and you come in and say, I didn't know, it's not an acceptable excuse. And we have come across it before where we've brought people in and they've said, my supervisor told me I could.
Yep.
And I know it's hard sometimes because this is a superior and you should be able to trust them, but they sometimes don't always know. So, you know, if there is something that you're thinking isn't correct, maybe talk to your supervisor about it, or look at the rules of conduct so you can show them like, no, actually it says this.
Did you just say that they're subject to change sometimes?
Yep,
Once a
yep.
year? Once a year.
So, and I'm not saying they change once a year, it's just a general recommendation to just look at them once a year to make sure there haven't been any changes.
Right, it was August 1 of 2012 was the effective date of the current.
And that's on your board website or on?
Yep.
Thanks.
And the references to the specific statutes are in this PowerPoint, so you can look at them. I mean, one of the things that's in there is there are some things that are considered mandatory reporting requirements. Some are permissive, you can, but you don't have to. But with the mandatory ones, then you could be put in a situation where someone would say, well, they knew about this and they didn't report it. So then your license could be in
Right.
jeopardy. So I mean, that's for major things, like if you suspect that another alcohol and drug counselor is impaired because of chemical use or mental health issues, or if you have reason to believe that another alcohol and drug counselor has engaged in a sexual relationship with a client. Some of the major ones are the required reporting, and then everything else is you may report it.
So if you know about that and you don't report it, that can be a problem for you.
And one thing that I don't know if you guys talk about at all is the health professional services program. I think it's such a good thing to bring up. It's called HPSP. It's for all health licensed professionals in Minnesota. It is a monitoring program for people with chemical and mental health issues if they're licensed. So if you had a problem and you could self-report to HPSP versus reporting to your board, licensing board, and it would meet that reporting requirement. If you have reason to believe that another LADC is impaired, you could report them to HPSP instead of reporting to the board, and that would meet your reporting requirement as well.
Health
And
professional services.
Health Professionals Services Program. And they then will evaluate to determine if that licensed professional needs to be monitored, if they don't have an illness that needs to be monitored, and sometimes they do also recommend that someone refrain from practice if the issues are severe enough.
And sometimes they order screens.
Usually if you're monitored, yeah.
Right.
You have to do
That's part
random
of it.
screens, yep.
So,
And they have their own website with lots of information on it. And also, when licenses are issued for the first time, we do put a brochure in the mailing packet about HPSP.
It's just such a great program, and I don't think all licensed professionals are necessarily aware of it. The board can also refer people to HPSP, so if we got a complaint from someone saying, I think this person has an issue with alcohol, then we can refer them to the Health Professional Services Program as well.
so just to make sure I understand this correctly, it meets the reporting requirement?
Yep.
So you don't need to report it to the board, you could go straight there?
Yep, exactly.
No matter what it is? or-
Yep.
Okay.
Well, just impairment.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, impairment.
Okay.
So if someone had
Yeah.
sex with, you think someone had sex with a client,
That
it
comes
really wouldn't
to
do you
us.
any good to refer them to HPSP. It's only when it has to do with impairment issues.
Like either chemical or mental health?
Yep.
Mhm.
Any other questions? All right, thank you guys so much for coming in, let's give them a round of applause.
Thank you. And if you think of something,
Yes.
just send us an email.
Yep.
And
Sounds great.
we will.
We do have walk-in hours on Tuesdays and Thursdays as well, if you have any questions that come up and you'd rather come in person.
Where are you?
We are in Minneapolis, University Avenue. We're very close to the University of Minnesota.
You said Tuesday and Thursdays walk-in?
Tuesday and Thursdays from 1 to 4.
And nobody needs an appointment, we clear our schedules and that's.
What were the times again?
1 to 4.
Tuesdays and
Where do
So-
you, your address is on the website, huh?
And sometimes people just feel better dropping off their application, because then we can look it over
Yeah.
and let you know right on the spot if anything's missing.
And I think the instructions recommend that you keep a copy of your own, you know, photocopy of your application.
Tuesdays and what?
Tuesday and Thursday afternoons from 1 to 4.
Get the stampede.
And you're cool if we keep this video in our little library of videos?
Of course.
Thank you so much.